Well, we'll go ahead and kick it off then. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in this morning. As noted, we have kind of a special mini masterclass session this week, live from South by Southwest. We're here in Austin, Texas, at the British Music Embassy venue. So this is Cedar Street, kind of a cool hang, tons of bands. I actually was just reading in the Austin Chronicle, they highlighted 101 kind of must-see South by Southwest acts for this year, and 13 out of the 101 are performing here at this venue. For a number of years, Allen Heath has been the exclusive console provider for the British Music Embassy. Obviously, being British makes sense. So we're here. We've got a handful of desks, and today wanted to do a bit of just a rig walkthrough. We've got some cool stuff going on with some Waves integrations. We've got a CTI 1500 at Continuity, kind of the production console role, which some of you may not be so familiar with. We kind of want to explain how we're using that and how we've got it wired up. And then we'll toss over to Bangs to talk about Monitor World a bit. And then we've got plenty of time for questions. If anybody is curious about how we've got things going, we'll try to give you some visuals to walk around and some sights and sound as well. So I think without any further ado, if Jack is available and wants to start his tour. Oh, look at that over at front of house. Good morning, Jack, all the way from the UK. He woke up nice and early this morning for us. Take it away, Jack.
It was very rude of you to get me out of bed this early. But yes, hello from next door. Jeff is hiding away there in the bar. As all of us should at this time in the morning, I think. So I'm sat here in front of house. I'm going to go through a little bit about the rig that we've got set up here. I'm not quite used to filming myself on my phone, so apologies if some of the angles don't work very well. And here is, look, live. Do you want that microphone on now? Is that what's happening? They've got a duty calls, RF1. It was already on. There we go. So let's have a little look at what we've got going on here. I'm going to flip my camera around real quick. As soon as I work out how to do that on Zoom. So we have our S5000, which is providing most of our mixing duties today. As we pan around to the right here, I've got a little bit of space for engineers' laptops and outboards, bits and bobs. The way we're doing the split on this is we have a continuity desk, which is this CTI 1500 here. I might be interrupted again because I don't have to actually mix the show while I'm doing this. So we've got a CTI here, which is providing production console duties and continuity. And what that is in this context is we are taking the output from our S5000 and we are passing it to our continuity desk. And the continuity desk has access to all of the inputs. In fact, in real terms, it is the main console here today. All of the physical inputs and outputs go into the continuity console, and the DM64 with DX32 with 2 lots of prime preamps, 2 lots of prime outputs are all being controlled by this 1500. There's some gain sharing going on, which gain shares into, it's fine, and you just jump in, We've got some gain sharing going on, going to the 5000 front of house and the 5000 monitors, which Bangs is going to take you through. We've got 2 DM0s, one for front of house, one for monitors. We've got our front of house DM0 is just down here in our slightly messy under table area. What we have here is a Waves 3 card, a S-MIDI card. Those are both available for touring engineers to use with any sort of plugins that they want to bring along. I decided to put a DM0 under the table. So originally we were going to be in quite a tight front of house piece. Move a little bit further away. Can everyone still hear me all right with what's going on in the background?
Yep, still hearing you.
Okay, good. I'll keep going then. Which meant that people had access to the front of the DM0 to get all of their waves and plugins, etc. I've been going. We've got quite short changeovers here at the DME. They're about 20 minutes, so anything you can do to make it a bit quicker and a bit easier, we'll absolutely do. So one of the reasons we have the continuity desk at all is it means we can actually meet the output from the main desk. We carry on having RF mics, presenters, etc. shortly on stage, but there's a segment show on the S5000. And anything they do, any show regions, etc., they're not going to take the show down. There are a couple of other interesting things going on, which Banks might sort of explain in further details. He's got it in front of him. Is that he has the continuity DM64. He's got 2 gigahertz cards here, a Danto card. The Danto card is going out doing digital splits to the BBC. I'm not sure if this is the best time to pass to Bangs, just because it might be a bit quieter side of stage for him to go and go through some of the mod stuff. If anyone has any questions, please back to my ability.
Yeah, I think I obviously saw the order and the setup going in around the Prime card, so I was aware of that going on. But maybe for some folks on the in the meeting here, if they're not totally familiar with the Prime cards, why did we go with Prime cards, and what are the Prime cards?
So Prime cards are a sort of premium preamp option. That's not to say that the normal preamps are anything other than very good, really. But it's just if you want something a bit special, a bit nicer, a bit fancier, you can go ahead and put the Prime input cards into one of our DX2 expanders. Prime preamp cards, predominantly the benefit you get is this transient response. There's a little bit of sort of tone improvement, and then there are absolutely fantastic quality analog to digital converters. So those are sort of the main benefits of the Prime input cards. I like to use them on drums. I think that anything that has really sort of a really sort of transient response that you want to really polish up and make kind of exciting. And Prime preamp cards are a really good way to go.
Cool. You mentioned drums and transients. What firmware are the D-Lives running? And is there anything in the new firmware update that you might want to highlight, particularly around transients?
I see what you've done there, Mr. Hawley. Absolutely. Okay, so we're running the latest firmware, which is 193. That comes with a number of updates to the and I just want to point out that currently the talk that's going on the stage is being the continuity desk, which means that I am free to play the main front house. So that's one of the benefits here. If I have a look at my drums, this is some of the drum sets we had from last night. And you can see that on most of the drums, instead of using additional gates, we've gone for the dual threshold and standard. If I was to pick up this right tom here, you'll see this lovely little device. This is something that we include it's free with D-Live. It's one of the deep plugins, so using it with no additional latency, completely phase coherent with all your other channels. Dual threshold expander is kind of interesting. So we were asked by a lot of people to create just a standard source expander, like many other people do, mostly for use on vocals. And our engineering team went away, and what they found was that actually there was something more interesting we could do. We could give people more control and do something that not very many other people are doing, with VSTs or plugins at all, let alone actually built into the console. So this is a source expander with an adjustable lower threshold. And what this means is you can go from something that's very simple, similar to a gate. If we have the thresholds very close together, it's essentially functioning as a gate at that point. But as you pull the thresholds apart, it starts to transform into an expander. If you have them close together, it's quite an aggressive expansion. As you pull them really, really, really far apart, you end up with really, really gentle expansion. And what it's made with drums, if you want them to sound gated, if you want to have that sort of punch, you can roll the attack up so they open a little bit later in the transient response. And if you want something that just sounds cleaner, then you can use it more as an expander. And there are a number of other things that are new for 1.9. So we also have our source expander. So source expander is just here. The source expander will be much more familiar to people who've used other people's expansions products. The idea being here that you can get, you can have an expander with very minimal fuss, very, very easy to use, very, very quick to set up. And a couple of other additional bits of deep processing going on in the console getting used for 1.9. My favourite one here would be the bus compressor, which is lovely to use when you main alarm bus. But also on things like vocal buses, I really hear a lot of BD just to make give yourself like a nice base of BD.
Sweet. Yeah, so I'm not sure. It looks like they have a quick little event going on the stage over where Banks is at. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to hear Banks. If we toss over to him, I don't know. You want to give it a shot at all, Banks?
How are we doing? I think they've just finished actually, so it works out perfectly. Yeah. So yeah, forgive the noise, everyone, but we are in a working venue here, so this is a real show. This is not a drill. So forgive. We did have some actual work to do and intervening in our fun here. But I just wanted to give you a little rundown. So Jack showed you front of house. You saw the continuity desk and what that's all about. So we're going to take a look at Monitor World. So I'm just going to show you where I'm at here. So on the side of the stage, we have a Monitor World. We have an S5000 in here running monitors. And so pretty standard setup here. But next door, we have our prime inputs and outputs that we talked about. Those are our wonderful audiophile grade inputs and outputs for anything that you want to use them for. We've got 10 units of PSM 1000 here, so we can do up to 10 stereo mixes to in-ears. And then we've got our Shure Axient digital wireless and our antenna combiners down here. And then moving down from there, we've got the DM0 that's feeding the monitor console, the engine for the monitor console, and then the DM64 that is taking all the inputs from the stage and has all the preamps and outputs on it. This is being controlled by the CTI 1500, the continuity desk that Jack spoke so much about. We've got Giga Ace cards in all of the DM racks. So from the DM64 here, we've got 2 Giga Ace cards. So we've got discrete feeds to monitors and to front of house from the continuity desk. And then additionally, we have a 128 channel Dante card below that is feeding a full multi-track split over to the BBC for their simulcast on Radio 1. So they can actually take our mixed feeds, but generally they take a full multi-track split and do their own mix over there in the UK. So we've got transfer engineers here on site that are monitoring the streams going back to the BBC studios. And so it's very exciting to have all this stuff going on here, going back and being simulcast in the UK. On the Surface, let me flip my camera around. Jack's got me on here, so I might as well just stick with Jack. But on this Surface, we got a pretty standard setup with inputs here, buses on this side. So we've got several wedge mixes. Our friends from Ricus Hines provided wedges on stage. So we've got several wedge mixes. Right now we're set up for a panel. Obviously, not too many bands are going to play with sofas and chairs. But at about 2 o'clock, they'll strike these chairs, and then we'll bring the drum kit back, and then we'll be back into show mode. So, but very quick and easy setup and monitors, and without any analog splits or any extra copper fuss, we're able to have 4 different audio streams going, doing 4 different mixing tasks from one set of preamps. So it's a really efficient and wonderful setup. Does anybody have any questions out there about setup?
Yeah, maybe you can just real quickly, you mentioned 4 different audio streams, but I also heard that we've got Waves going in at least one of the desks. We've got Giga Ace going, and then we've got Dante multitrack. Is that, why would we have all these different protocols going? And is there MADI in the mix? I mean, we might as well add that while we're at it, right?
Yeah, there's, and you know what? We still have a lot of empty card slots where we could be doing a lot of additional mixed stuff. It's just all for options. So none of us run plugins because we all use the wonderful stuff that's built into the console. But some of our engineers coming in as guest front of house engineers for visiting bands may want to use Waves. Additionally, Waves card is a great option for doing multi-track recording straight into a laptop without any kind of interfaces or converter boxes. We are also running MADI. Jack has got a M1, and there's limited compatibility of some protocols with the M1 processor. So using MADI to an NGB converter allows him to get into his M1. We've got Dante for the BBC, as I said, but it's also available for anyone else that may want a Dante split. So basically, anything that anyone might need of any flavor, we've got it covered. So it's just basically about covering all bases.
We did have one question come in on a related topic. What RedNet box are we using to stream to the BBC? So is there any other additional hardware in there? Focusrite is in the mix, or nope?
Nope. We don't need that because the Dante card in the console gives us 128 channels bidirectional directly to the Dante network. So they may have RedNet devices at the other end. I'm not sure what the BBC is using for their Dante reception. But as far as our stream leaving here, it's all native in the console with just the Dante 128 option card in the DM64. Good question.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and if we've got any other questions, go ahead and put those in the chat there, or just kind of raise your hand or chime in. It's kind of noted we are in full production mode, up and running, and that was kind of, I think, a good example actually in real time. We didn't even plan that; it just really happened. That the continuity desk was able to cover what was happening on stage, and as you saw, Jack could go over to the front of house console and adjust things willy-nilly without impacting what was actually going out the main PA. So that's another good example of, if that was the next engineer getting set, how you might use that continuity desk.
Yeah, it allows the guest engineers to work on their show file. They can basically do anything that they want, and we don't have to be reaching over them to change the house music or bring up an MC microphone for an announcement. Kind of lets guest engineer have their space while we can continue working. So yeah, the production and continuity desk is really critical for that.
Cool. So just before you get too far away from that point, what we've done that's quite interesting is, because we're during the day doing conference, which doesn't need as many operators, we've actually got a main bus running on the monitor console. There's also a main bus running on the continuity console, and there's a main bus running on the main console, which means any of the consoles can do any of the jobs at any time, which is really handy for single opping, because particularly for the conference guys during the day, they've got Video World down here for playing stuff on the LED wall. And it just means that then when it's simpler, where you don't need like 9 engineers looking after a band, you can just have one person sat at any one of the desks operating any of or all of the roles. Just to roll back to the BBC question, I know upstairs they've got 3 different laptops running Dante virtual sound cards. They've got some triple redundancy, and they've got a little hardware box as well for USB recording. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but they're running mostly Dante virtual sound card upstairs. Oh, someone asked about comms. They've also got our comms lines, which means that later, when they come to do the mix down, they can hear me and Steve on our comms lines going, "Oh yeah, channel 1, that's the cowbell," or whatever. And it makes it a little bit easier if we've had to move away from the festival patch them to identify where different channels are going to be in their recordings.
Yeah, very cool. So that's using Dante to insert intercom into monitor mixes. Various ways to do that, but yeah, as Jack just said, that's how we've got it rolling here. I can quickly address Jason's question. Yeah, what company do we work for? Do we own it? So in this case, we all are Allen and Heath proper. So myself, I'm the marketing director for Allen and Heath USA. Banks is our live sound and touring manager for Allen and Heath USA. And then Jack is like king of the world from Allen and Heath UK directly. But I do want to make sure to be clear, the desk that we have in the mix today, I think you can see the logo back there. Epicenter Productions is actually the local provider of a lot of the gear. There's a handful of different sponsors and local providers that are outfitting the facility. And obviously, thanks to them, as you noticed, a name drop before, Rankus Hines is providing some of the monitor rig. Speaker-wise, there's Shure stuff involved. So a family affair, lots of companies coming together to make this space happen. Looks like another question here. So basically, the monitor desk and front of house desk are running in the same space. Yes. So as noted there, from any one of the desks, you can kind of get in and adjust what you need. But functionally, and just kind of even where the location of the operators are, I don't know if maybe you can flip your camera back around, Jack. So they're in monitor world now, literally by the stage. Can quickly go up.
I could do one better. There we go. So I'll go for a little walk. So I'm on the stage right now. Bangs is down there in Monitor World, which is Bangs. And you can see we've got our front of house world at the back there. My like some meters, isn't it? Yes. Which has both the continuity desk and the front of house desk. And if we follow these stairs here, go up into artist world, which is also where the BBC are. You get a lovely, nice top-down view of the stage. So that's setting up at the moment, so it's not quite as exciting as it looks in the evening, so I can get a good look down from the top of the stage here. You can see everybody's in context.
Just to be clear, we have 3 completely separate mixers that are completely autonomous and have their own mix buses, own processing, everything. But what we are sharing is we have all of the audio for the entire show networked amongst all of the consoles, including the 4th system, which is the BBC. So anything can be taken from anywhere and sent to and from anywhere. But we still have 3 completely separate mix systems.
Absolutely. If I can jump in very briefly, the way I'm doing that is over the GigaRace connection. So I've got a pair of GigaRace cards connecting each of the D lives, and then I'm sending bus sends back to the continuity desk. So on the continuity desk, I've got a fader that says S5 front of house, a fader that says S5 Mons, and you can sort of select which desk comes out of the bus from that comes out the PA from there as well. We obviously got interrupted by microphones and stuff while we were doing front of house. Do you want me very quickly just talk through some of the digital I/O cards and things that we've got running here?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah.
So we know that we've got the BBC upstairs. They're doing a dancehall feed, but we've also got a backup multi-track recording going on at front of house. So I've got 2 laptops behind me. One I've got predominantly doing the BBC have just arrived. I've just seen them roll past with their big flight cases. I've got one laptop over here, which is running Reaper and doing a multi-track recording from Waves, which is a backup to the BBC stuff. So if anything fails in their triple redundant system, which seems reasonably unlikely, we've got another recording here ready to go. I've also got another laptop which is predominantly running Director, which just means that, particularly as we've got very short changeovers, and engineers want things like layout changes to the console, they can be doing things like tuning their drums whilst I'm fiddling around on the laptop, sorting out their layout or setting up soft keys that they might want, that kind of thing. So at front of house, I think you sort of mentioned, I don't know if everyone actually managed to hear me. Let me flip my camera around. We've got a DM0 under the table. On the top of the DM0, we've got our GigaRace card, which is actually where all of the audio from the continuity desk is being fed to the DM0. And we've got 2 cards available for people to bring their own sort of plug-ins, multi-track recordings, and those are just 100% for guest engineers. We're not using it at all. So all of my stuff, not my back, too old, is in a Waves card on the back of the continuity desk, which is just sort of hiding. I don't know if you can see it because I can't see my camera now, around there. There's another iPad which is not particularly ANH related, but I quite like it, running this app with noise measurement on. And yeah, that's my little front of house booth. I also like, again, not particularly ANH related, but being the British Music Embassy, they've managed to get a kettle. They'll have tea in America.
Nice.
On tap. Who knew?
Yeah, tea in America, that's the best thing about this venue. And we got a couple questions popping up. Which desk controls the gain for the various pre's?
That's really interesting. So we're running game sharing, which means that actually all the desks can control the game. And we've decided for operational reasons that it'll be the monitor engineer that does most of the game changes. The continuity desk, the CTI, is connected to the DM64 with a DX32 that has all the physical I/O essentially. So that's the console with the pre's, but with game sharing, what we actually do is allow Steve, who's our house monitor engineer, he's the one sort of controlling all the pre's, and I've got them disabled on the front of house console, just so front of house engineers don't accidentally grab them. If they really need to make some changes, they can still do it. They can go into that preamp section, they can, try and touch the gain, it'll pop up with a message going, are you sure you've turned these off? So in an emergency, yes, anyone can control the game. But for operational reasons, we've agreed that Steve, our monitor engineer, he's in charge of games. At the end of the line check, we stick game tracking on the front of house console. So if Steve has to make any game changes during the show, they'll automatically be compensated for with trim on the front of house console.
Very cool. And maybe I'll toss this one over to Bangs. I know he has some thoughts on this next question. Can Waves cards work like Dante for passing audio from one console to another, or is it primarily for tracking to and from a computer? With the shortage of Dante cards right now, yeah, I've heard about that. Curious if that's an option for this kind of audio pass task.
It absolutely is. Yeah, you can use Waves for, it's very similar to Dante in that it's just an audio networking protocol. So there's nothing unique about it. It's not just for plugins. So you can use it to go from console to console. You can use it to go from console to computer, console to server. You can any way that you need to transport between SoundGrid devices. And so if you have a DLive with a Waves card, it can go to anything else with a Waves card or anything else that's a SoundGrid device, including an Avantis with a Waves card or a SQ with a Waves card. All that said, there is another way, which is using our proprietary Giga Ace in DLive and then the S-Link in Avantis and SQ. It's an easier, less expensive, and faster protocol to transfer audio between desks. So our main our main digital split between desks here is run over Giga Ace for speed and stability. But we could certainly do it over Waves. We could have done it over Dante. We've got all of them running, but our main preamp share is all done over Giga Ace.
Cool. And this is a question, kind of a little one that just popped in my mind. So you're talking about Giga Ace and S-Link being a fast way of enabling digital connection between the consoles. Maybe can you speak to, there's kind of two senses of fast, right? So there's the fast and easy, but there's also the latency question. If you can speak to both of those points real quick as it relates to Giga Ace and S-Link.
Yeah, well, because it's proprietary, built into the console, everything patches directly in the UI on the surface. So there's no additional computers or other software needed. So it is quick in convenience-wise. But as you said, one of the biggest things for me is that even at full cable length, the full audio path is 5 samples, 52 microseconds. So it's a lot faster than you're going to get with pretty much any other transport protocol as far as latency goes.
Super cool. Looks like Jeremy's got some feedback here. So I've done AS50 into Maddie and straight out to Dante for a broadcast split, and kept all in the room audio and Giga Ace. Super smooth. Yeah, so great comment there, Jeremy. Yeah, some really cool. I think sometimes people, Dante and these other protocols, well, those are fancy, and they kind of skip over. Well, sometimes just connect via Giga Ace if you don't need a crazy star topography getting out into these other networks and going nuts. Like if you just need a desk to a desk, Giga Ace is the way.
And we prefer to keep it simple, but as we've demonstrated here with the rigs, the really important thing is the ability of DLive and Avantis and to some degree SQ to have a lot of flexibility and options, and to be able to use any of these connections to be intercompatible with whatever you may run into out in the world. So you're not just locked into one thing. And especially, none of us anticipated what's going on with Dante, but our flexibility has really made us powerful in that it's very easy for us to pivot to another platform because we've got so many options of different ways to move audio around in the universe.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great point. And again, in some instances, you're not saying that there's no need for Dante or Waves or Maddie or these other protocols obviously exist and will continue to exist. If we had, for whatever reason, some other manufacturer's console in the mix and there was no way around it, then yeah, you'd get into a situation where Giga Ace might not be the core audio transport of choice. But yeah, in this sort of setup, and back to why we might have chose DLive and chose the particular system that we have in place, yeah, Giga Ace the desk together, some gain sharing, and get out via Dante for broadcast, get over to via Maddie for X, via Dante for Y, Waves for Z, so on and so forth. So that's also kind of a cool thing to keep in mind is you don't have to commit to one and only stick to the one. And as we've seen here, we've got multiple transport digital audio protocols all running in the same space, literally and physically.
We missed a question from Scott. I think this would be a good one for Jack. Scott asked, are you running only a main bus, front of house mains, or are you running multiples? Example, sub, bus, front bill, etc. I believe you've got matrices. Jack, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just while I've got the microphone open, I do have some engineers starting to appear, so I might need to disappear. But what I'll probably try and do is film what we're doing. It'll be a bit mean to try and what's the word I'm looking for? Surprise them with a live stream appearance, but we can certainly do some video while you guys talk. So yeah, what I'm doing is I'm doing a main left and right from the house console. I've got a main left and right from the monitor console. They feed into inputs on the continuity desk. On the continuity desk, I've got sends to. We've got two lots of subs going on. So we've got subs under the stage. We've got subs that are flown. Just to manage noise, offsite noise limits, I've got separate controls for those. So each loads a mono matrix. I've got the main arrays, which are currently a stereo matrix, and I've got a stereo record bus as well. So I'm taking main left and right from each of the consoles, and then I'm splitting it out into matrices. There's some additional sort of processing going on in amp world with acoustics, but I'm essentially feeding them, left, right, sub, and another stub. I don't know. The other thing, we do have a couple of desk consoles. So one of the wonderful things about the about all the audio networking stuff is we can really easily integrate with them and give the BBC everything they need. The other nice thing about having all this setup here is it's really flexible. So on the main console, I've got a channel spare. So if people want to mix aux-fed sub, it's not how I like to mix, but if people want to, it's really easy to pivot our matrix configuration as it is at the moment to go from being LR to all the matrices to LR to the arrays and the mono sub aux to the subs. Sorry, it's a very long night here.
Cool.
Thanks, Jack. We should let Jack go back to work. So thanks so much, Jack. We appreciate you being with us.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I'll probably leave the video running just so you can see what's going on. But I might need to disappear at any moment.
Cool. Thanks, Jack. Awesome. Well, we'll got one last question here from Jason. It looks like we've also got to head to our next exciting South by event here. So we'll wrap it just a minute or two here, but we'll grab this last one. So Bangs, if you want to tackle this one, are there any plugins on the D-Live that you would recommend for the Avantis aside from the D-Pack? So for people who aren't totally familiar, so basically D-Live has D plugins, Avantis has D plugins, SQ has D plugins. The plugins that are native to the console vary a bit, and obviously as you get higher up the range, there are particular plugins that are available only as you go up that food chain. So kind of my answer just before Banks maybe speaks a bit to it. I think at some point it does get a little bit like, well, I like the interface a little better on Avantis, but I like this, function of the D-Live, some personal preference in there. I think when it comes to the actual plugins, the thing that I think really is actually cool is that the core plugins that are available, even aside from D-Pack on Avantis, which is add-on additional effects, is they're super powerful. And I think that's one thing that definitely sets Avantis apart and why it's been so successful. Certainly there are other bells and whistles. More bells and whistles are always good, but I think for me, one of the things that seems very consistent in the feedback we've got about Avantis is, the onboard compressors are insane. The gate is really workable and functional. There are other things that D-Live has, but let's not forget just the core Avantis out of the box is pretty badass. So just my 2 cents from feedback that I've heard and my bit of poking around on the desk. But Bangs, maybe you've got a thought on that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Avantis, especially with D-Pack, has everything and more that you need to do a great show. I think the core of the question was, in the difference between DLive and Avantis. And Jack showcased the dual threshold expander before, and that's a wonderful tool that is only on DLive at this point. As with everything else, if you'd like to see it in Avantis, get on the forum and shout about it, and we'll see what we can do. That's the way our world works. And Jason additionally asked about would Waze be better? Better is kind of a loaded thing. I personally don't use Waze because I don't want the extra instability. I don't want the extra latency. I don't want the extra cost. I don't want the extra devices to carry around, the extra interconnection. But that's my preference. Waze does have some wonderful tools out there. And so if they have something that appeals to you, then you should go ahead and use it. But just be aware that plugins are not without caveat, external plugins. One of the great things about using the deep stuff in the desk is that it keeps your phase relationship, and it doesn't add any additional latency. Whereas if you go to anything external, whether it be Waves or Universal Audio or anything outside the desk, it's going to disrupt your timing and potentially destabilize your audio. So those are just things. I'm not saying don't use it, but there's something to consider.
So cool. I think with that, unless you've got any other burning questions, thanks again for joining us. It's been fun kind of showing you a little bit of what we got up to here at South by Southwest. And if you want to see what we've got going the rest of the week, head over to the Allen Heath website or our social channels. We'll be sharing some behind the scenes videos, checking out other artists, and kind of doing interviews with engineers at this same venue as well throughout the week, and we'll post them there. So super awesome, and thanks everybody. Thanks Jack, especially for helping us out. Thanks Banks, and rock and roll. We'll see everybody later.